Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Curtis Selby, your tired midnight blogger, what blogs in this case at 6:01 p.m. I've probably done a terrible job of explaining this, but I've pinned a link to the top of the chat. That is Netter's Network. I would love it if y'all would go there after the stream and watch Troy and Netter talk about their channel and their hopes and aspirations for the future. Topic today is a little bit it's as always it's a bigger mouthful than I can really chew. I'm going to be talking about the decline of religious faith in the West. Going to talk a little bit about whether it's a good or a bad thing, and then basically I'll just share a few things about possible causes, possible consequences, things of that nature. I know it's been a rough week for me. I hope it's, I know there's at least one person in the chat that's having a rough time. For what it's worth, I'm not a very holy or good man, but prayers are going up from us to you. I would like to say hello to the people in the chat. John Ponterero, hail and good evening to you. You are one of the most supportive people I know. You're amazing. I know you've helped Netter get closer to ours. I know you're helping me as well. God bless you. Thank you so much. Hail Connie Cleary, faithful bird woman of YouTube. Check out her second channel, Fluff Chick Productions. She has beautiful videos of wonderful birds, often set to beautiful music. Hail from over here, John Ponterero. And Charlotte Night Star the werewolf. Oh! I hope you are doing well. Thank you very much for being over here. I hope this is something that is worth your time, hopefully a little bit entertaining. It's a heavy subject for me because I've kind of gone from fundamentalist, hyper-religious, hyper-legalist to someone who kind of doubted everything and doubted if God existed, doubted if he loved us. And now I'm kind of getting toward a middle ground. I'm just sharing that for context. I definitely want to make sure that everyone knows I'm not here to proselytize. I'm not wanting to try to convert anyone to Christianity or to believe in God. I just want to talk about the topic and see what we come up with as a community. All right, I'm going to stop the soft drone music. Before I dive too much into the topic itself, I wanted to share a little bit of good news. My channel, while the growth as far as subs has slowed, it's still climbing very slowly but gradually. Views are coming along again slowly but gradually. Thank you very much, John. I know you're probably a great deal of that growth. I just wanted to share, though, that my video on capitalism versus socialism, I hope it's okay that I self-promote a little bit here. This has 3,400 views now. It's the most viewed thing on this channel and is probably the second most viewed thing I've ever put out on any social media platform. I have a video on Instagram of basically me being silly over short video of Elon Musk talking about the dangers of AI. It's got about 10,000 views. Obviously, as you can see, nothing else, very little else comes even close to either of those things. So I appreciate you guys. Your support is wonderful and amazing. Thank you so much for that. And I guess I will dive into the topic. Let me take a look before I do. All right. We already talked about a lot of that. I may talk about that at the end if I have time. Okay. So the very first thing, I'm going to do the opposite of what I should probably do. I should probably talk about horrible things that are going on, sensationalize you, provoke you to watch. Instead, I'm going to do that bass-ackward, and John Ponderero, only 1,000 of those views was me. Well, thank you for being a third of the views of that video, John. I'm going to do this backward, though. I'm going to start with stuff that's a little bit more mundane and then gradually lead into the more scary, perhaps, things. I'm going to be leaning fairly heavily on the book We've Got Issues by Philip C. McGraw, and I'm going to use a similar formula to what I'm doing with the real Anthony Fauci. I'm not going to so much share what Dr. Phil talks about as I'm going to share his sources so that we can come up with our own thoughts and ideas about these things. Going to start with Frontiers in Psychology, the relationship between spirituality, health-related behavior, and psychological well-being. Studies suggest a positive association of spirituality and health behaviors with well-being, especially subjective well-being, but still the precise character of such relationships between all these conducts remains unknown. The present study aims to explore the relations between spirituality, health-related behaviors, and psychological well-being in the context of acquired education. Going to skip down a little bit here. Almost 20 years ago, following the commencement of the positive psychology movement, the research approach in the areas of psychology, especially those concerning mental health, began to change, concentrating on a much greater interest in well-being than on mere diseases or disorders. I don't think this article brings it up, but I know that there is a wonderful book about positive, the psychology of happiness. I can't remember the author's name, but he was president of the APA for a while. He was the one who did the studies that established the principle of learned helplessness in dogs. That principle is, they did a study where they would shock a dog when it walked on even numbered squares. Like, basically it took a room and made a chessboard pattern, and either the white or the black squares would shock the dog. Obviously, the dog learned to not walk on the squares that would shock it. Then they switched it up, and the dog would relearn. And okay, now I'm going to move on these other squares. Then they made it so that every square shocked the dog, and the dog just kind of gave up. It wouldn't move. It wouldn't try to evade it, because it had learned that whatever it did, it was going to get shocked. I used to try to talk to people about that and how it applies to education and business, but nobody cared or listened. So, but anyway, what's up, Enigma Severus? Salute back to you. I am taking on the likely overheady subject of the decline of religion in the West. Before I dive too much deeper into the article, I wanted to also share that I had a comment from someone talking about how religion itself is a bad thing, and that Christ is actually good. And I've come across that concept quite a lot. Whether you agree with it or not is up to you. I'm not going to try to persuade you either way, but there is a element of Christianity, of Christians that say that religion itself is a terrible thing and that Christ was actually fighting the concept of religion. And of course, you have to come to salvation through him according to that belief. Enigma, you might actually know more about those things than I do. Probably you do. And hello, Miss Frosty, a beautiful day. Howdy, howdy. I hope you are doing well. Thank you for coming by. If you see Moira later, because I know she's streaming and I doubt that I will be done by then, please tell her hi. And anyone who gets bored with my stuff after about an hour, by all means, feel free to go see Moira Kitty. She's going to be discussing all the crappy stuff that happens in the news, all the news that's not fit to print. She's going to spell it out and let you know things that the mainstream media likely isn't going to share with you. So please check her out in a little bit if you don't want to stay here. But I would love if you did. So two main directions have emerged in well-being research. One based on a hedonistic approach, the other on eudaimonia. Not to be confused with eudaimon, eudaimonia. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. According to the hedonistic approach, well-being is concerned with effective pleasure in someone's life. The term subjective well-being is used in positive psychology in the sense of a high level of positive effect, a low level of negative effect, and a high degree of satisfaction with one's life. I don't mean to read the whole study. I will skip down to the part about spirituality, because this study is basically the relationship between spirituality, health-related behavior, and psychological well-being. According to this article, Joseph et al., spirituality should be understood as a more general, unstructured, personalized, and naturally occurring phenomenon where a person seeks closeness and or connectedness between him or herself and a higher power or purpose. Other authors define spirituality in terms of search for universal truth, an activity enabling people to discover meaning and significance in the surrounding world. Spirituality can also be perceived as dynamic reality. Constantly exploring something new may also involve the learning of the ultimate boundaries of existence and seeking a broader meaning of life. Hart defines spirituality as a way in which an individual experiences his or her faith in everyday life and style in which the individual refers to the final conditions of individual existence. I know I thought about going into this, but I was afraid I'd get too deep into the weeds. There's a branch of psychology that came along in the 60s called transpersonal psychology. And essentially, it borrows somewhat heavily on some of the principles of James' classic book, what was it called? I want to say it was The Religious Experience or something like that. Sorry, having a senior moment. But transpersonal psychology basically studies all kinds of aspects of people striving to do spiritual things. They study church. They study different kinds of churches. They study Buddhism and meditation and mushrooms and all kinds of stuff. They're often considered very woo-woo. Some people think they're amazing. I will not comment any further on it because I don't have enough to say about it, really, in this context. Spirituality forms a multidimensional theoretical construct. In essence, it constitutes transcendence understood as going beyond or above the real I. In this context, spirituality is defined as experiencing transcendence through inner peace, harmony, or connectedness with others. I'm going to skip down a bit. Studies demonstrated the positive impact of spirituality on physical health and mental health, as well as on other positive health outcomes such as subjective well-being, health-related quality of life, coping skills, recovering from mental illness. Oh, good luck with that. Or less addictive or suicidal. Ooh, I said it. Hopefully I didn't say it in the first 8 minutes. Nope, we're 15 minutes in. All right, Enigma Severus. Miss Frosty, beautiful day, listening while making French toast for dinner. An enigma pertaining to Christ and the badness of religion. It's complex. However, Christ never degraded other people's efforts. He did condemn the evilness that was done in the name of religious practice. Hold on one second. I am so sorry. I'm getting a call, and normally I would ignore it, but I'm going to see who it is. And I had muted myself. Huzzah! Isn't it wonderful? Okay, sorry about that. I guess I can basically just share with you then that last article established, it didn't prove necessarily, but it established a strong link between your psychology, and your health. So wonderful, wonderful. I will probably have to edit this one later. Yes, it was indeed a dramatic pause. Dun, dun, dun. But I don't want to go back over it. I instead will just barrel through like the bull in the china shop. And if your faith, if your beliefs, your spirituality has a direct correlation with your mental health, we see massive increases in basically all kinds of mental health issues. Is it possible that the decline in spirituality is at least correlated? Obviously, we don't know which causes the other, but is it possibly correlated? In this article, I'm going to share why Americans are losing their religion. Trying to keep an eye on you, and you are not me. The places that I go to. Okay. All About America explores American culture, politics, trends, whatever. A decades-long trend toward secularization, which has come more slowly to America than many other developed countries, appears to be picking up speed in the United States, according to polling and other evidence. In 1965, a Gallup poll found that 70% of respondents said religion is very important in their lives. Today, fewer than half of Americans say religion is very important. Younger generations probably weren't really brought up in a faith tradition, or maybe if they were, they didn't go to church that often. 45% is all that say that religion is very important. 1/4 of Americans, 26%, said they were religiously unaffiliated in 2023, which is up from 21% in 2013. The same study, the Public Religion Research Institute, suggests these religiously unaffiliated folks are not looking to get more religion. Only 9% say they are interested in finding a new religious or spiritual home. DJ Ronnie G, howdy. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that this ends up being informative and somewhat entertaining. Although I have evidently left massive gaps of silence and allowed you guys to read an article about the correlation between spirituality and psychological health in silence. I got you on my TV, but we'll be in a different chat until I get out of the kitchen. I understand that. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the comment. Enigma Severus, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics clearly discusses how moral living and a correct ethical lifestyle leads to a more fruitful and fulfilling life. Aristotle was not a Christian. You are correct. Although I do know that a lot of your earlier Catholic churches, or I say earlier, but were very keen on Aristotle. DJ Ronnie G, good to see you. And he saw that Roy Rim tour in Pittsburgh. All right. Very good. Here we see a mandolin maker, Mike Dulac. He's one of a growing number of Americans who say they don't associate themselves with any religion. I do know the little bit that I've glossed. I can't really say that I've studied, but the little bit that I've seen of transpersonal psychology, a lot of the people that follow it or that study it are not necessarily religious in that aspect, but they often feel themselves to be deeply spiritual. The decline in church attendance points to a major change in American civic life and engagement. According to political scientist David Campbell, who says Americans pulled away from other types of groups in the past, but were still affiliated with organized religion. Americans are less likely to be spending time with one another in the kinds of groups and the kinds of organizations where they learn to cooperate with one another. They get things done. They come together to mobilize on an issue, Campbell says. I wonder if that's why we have so many activists all over the place. There's just a lot less of that. The decline in religion is a big part of that story. Campbell, a professor at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, and if my friend Whiskey Flats was here, he would be all kinds of happy about that. Notion of religion has changed too much over time, says Darth Plato. Yeah, I mean, welcome to the channel. I hope you find something entertaining and somewhat informative here. But yeah, the ideas, the beliefs, the notion of how religion's to be done has changed quite a bit over time. Anyway, Campbell says another reason for the drop off in religious faith may be an allergic reaction to the religious right among people who were already on the religious periphery. I don't want to suggest that this is the only reason that people turn away from religion, but it's definitely a primary one, said Campbell, co-author of scientific studies on links between politics and religion in the United States. Increasingly, in many Americans' minds, religion equals the religious right or equals the Republican Party or maybe equals support for President Donald Trump. If that's what religion is, for many people, they don't want any part of religion. Now, even though I've had my journey, I don't want to be one of these people that's going to sit here and say, you can't be a Democrat. You can't be voting for Kamala and be a Christian. I'm not here saying that. I've had my own journey. I know that there are aspects, at least, of the charismatic movement that I was affiliated with in the past, largely because of my marriage, that it's very off-putting. You see behavior that you see as irrational, you see as crazy, and they have their reasons for it. And maybe the transpersonal psychologist would say, well, we study this experience because this is how these people connect with God, and maybe so, but I often, the Bible says that you'll know them by their fruits. Often I didn't see the fruits of these people's spirituality. I won't name names, but there was a person that had this small scale ministry, and she was always talking about the good that she was doing for people and for God, but all I really ever saw her doing was shopping with her friends and gossiping and basically blaming every bad thing that happened on some man. It really turned me off. So while I am having my journey back toward faith, I absolutely understand the people who've been turned off by it, and I'm hoping and praying that I don't become that kind of person. Basically, I portray God in such a way that you want nothing to do with God at all. Darth Plato, a Latin writer in 2nd century, criticized Christians for being atheists. So what they meant in those days is profoundly different from today. LDG at Free the Net, good evening. Welcome here. I hope you find something informative, something vaguely entertaining here, and I cannot wait until you free the net. Please, if you want to share, let us know how that is progressing, or if you just want to chill and listen, I'm happy for the support, whatever you would like to do. John Pontorero, I had to do a recording of a charismatic conference, including the service that went with it, so I know what you mean. They hired me to record and then produce tapes of the conference. Yeah, and there's varying levels in that. I know some Assembly of God churches where they'll preach speaking in tongues, which is one of the big things in that movement. But you might have 2 or 3 services go by and nobody does it. The church that I don't exactly attend, but I watch it virtually. I've watched them for 6 months, and there was somebody who spoke in tongues finally after the whole 6 months, but they did it in the way that the Bible, to my understanding, prescribes it. You give the message, but then somebody interprets that. Again, let me know if you think differently or what have you. Darth Plato, religion was always part of the homogeneity of the place in which people lived. Religions were different because they claimed different things. So talking about religion isn't the most helpful. Okay. DJ Ronnie G, I'm chilling, getting ready for my trip to San Antonio. About to inventory my SLR bag. I don't know what that is. Vintage Nikon F null. Okay. LDG's had a long day and is just listening. I understand that. I do understand that. All right. And DJ Ronnie G is sharing a link. Let me see if I'm smart enough. All right. Very good. Darth Plato, in the year 800, Charlemagne and the Pope created the two swords precedents, meaning the church was entirely interwoven with society in Europe. Oh, that's okay, DJ Ronnie G. It's all good. It's all good. Enigma Severus, probably one of the biggest misconceptions on Christianity. People can equate the human or the Christian as an example of who Christ is. I know I'm not a great example of a Christian. And you finish it down here. There are many people who observe others and receive a really bad example of who Christ really is. Darth Plato, this broke down over the centuries and gave rise to secular humanism. Yeah. I mean, there's legitimate reasons why some of this stuff has come about. Even though I'm lamenting it a little bit, there's also kind of a logic and a reason to why it's happened. But then there's other things going on too, and I'll get into those. I need to be cryptic here. Pacific 414 asked me to drop a link to you. I pasted it here instead. Okay. John Ponderero, single lens reflex. And that's the finishing of your comment. Darth Plato. Then in the last years of the 1900s, there was the emergence of logical positivism and scientism. We're still living under that rubric. Yeah, I mean, at least it strongly influences, although I think we're moving into something distinctly different. But a lot of the foundations of where we're at now, I would suggest that the classical liberals that I'm always harping about, that they likely have some of their foundations in that logical positivism and scientism. Here's Trump. I've become a supporter of his, but I also acknowledge that a lot of people see him as the big bad bogey. I will just let you make up your own mind at this point. I've said a lot of pro-Trump and anti-Kamala things. I don't want to become a pro-Trump or anti-Kamala channel, but that is my stance. I am pro-Trump. My views about what he's doing have shifted, but that doesn't mean that he's a perfect person or a saint, or that we should drink Kool-Aid and, basically just be Trump clones. Sam Abrams, a fellow in the American Enterprise Institute, which lists free people, free markets, and limited government as its core values, noted that one of the biggest drop-offs in religious adherence since the political rise of Trump has been among women. You can be actually from a fairly religious household, but now the extreme conservative rhetoric about things like abortion and the role of women is pushing young women away from that and turning them atheist, agnostic, into basically none of the above, says Abrams, who is also a professor of politics and social sciences at Sarah Lawrence College. There is a bigger issue that predates this, which is just rampant secularization and turning away from these religious organizations to begin with. And then the phenomenon of the extreme right has pushed people away very, very quickly, he adds. A Pew Research poll finds that 28% of U.S. adults describe themselves as atheists, agnostics, or nothing in particular. The atheists account for 4%. The survey finds that most nuns, quote unquote, believe in God or higher power, but they don't regularly attend religious services. And that's not nuns as in the Catholic kind of nun. It's someone who doesn't really believe in traditional institutional religion. Darth Plato, when people talk about morality and Christian concept of God, comes from the basis of the epistemology of morality. That is so. About 2/3 of the people questioned say they are not religious because they question a significant portion of religious teachings or don't believe in God. The decline in people attending services is happening in all age groups, according to Gallup. We see religious attendance much higher among older generations, and I think that's been true for a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but I think part of it is as you get older, you realize your mortality. You want to turn to something that's bigger than you and that you hope will outlast you. We see religious attendance much higher among older generations, much lower among younger generations. We still see declines among all age groups, Jones says. So even though older people are more likely to go to church, older people today are less likely to go to church than in the past. And here we see people in Zion Baptist Church. Not many people there. Not many people there. The growth in religious non-affiliation began after the Cold War, which ended in 1989. According to Campbell, Shelley Melia, a professor of children's and family ministry at Dallas Baptist University, said the COVID-19 pandemic, about which I'm not commenting at this point, which forced many religious institutions to stop in-person services for a period of time, may have accelerated the non-religious trend. Media believes younger people are looking for something different than their parents. While older people might be attracted to church buildings and formal religious events, younger adults might require a different approach. There's a need to shift away from more of an attraction model to an authentic model, because I think that's what our young people really want, says Melia, who is a licensed professional counselor. We've got big buildings. And this is something that the pastor that I'm listening to now echoes this in his sermons. We've got big buildings, but I think our younger generation sees injustice in the world and are far more interested in addressing that than supporting an institution that doesn't feel like they're as interested in that as they should be. So what happens when a country loses its religion? Campbell points to examples of secular countries that are functioning democracies. The Scandinavian countries are very secular, and they're generally thought to be among the most democratic of all the democratic countries in the world. Those are also countries with a high degree of happiness, Campbell says. So it's not necessarily the case that a secular society is a less democratic society or less happy society. But with religious symbols deeply embedded in national U.S. symbols and traditions, in God We Trust as printed on our currency, and So Help Me God as part of the presidential oath, how likely is America to become more secular? I suspect that over the medium to long term, we'll settle into a new equilibrium where religion will not be completely expunged from American life, but it will only occupy a different space than it does now, Campbell says. For some reason, I'm minded of I want to say the quote is from Voltaire, or I'm actually not going to quote him, but I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the exact quote, but it seems like he said that Christianity would be extinct before the end of his life. And whether that's good or bad, it didn't die out. Darth Plato, the notion being that people are created in the image of God, imago Dei, meaning that we have the capacity of morals because we reflect the design of God. Without that, one would need to root morality somehow else. This is different from saying that one can't be moral unless one is Christian, which is nonsense. That was never taught. I noticed one of the books that most deepened my view of a lot of aspects of reality was The Divine Comedy. And it was very interesting to me that he had very virtuous pagans, but because of the theology of his day, they had to be in hell, but they were basically in a kind of a limbo where they didn't really suffer, but they had no hope of going into heaven. But they were very moral. And then obviously purgatory, which was anathema to me back when I was a fundamentalist, Protestant. Basically, these were Christians. There were people who had accepted Christ, so they were to go to heaven, but they needed to be purged of their sins. And I don't know that I believe in a purgatory per se, but my readings of C.S. Lewis, I'm basically open to the thought that there might be some kind of purgation process, possibly something we wouldn't even understand, so that we can become the kind of people that would make heaven heaven. We haven't lost our religion and merely replaced it with forms of secular humanism. What Voltaire meant by Christianity was the church. The words were used interchangeably in the past quite often. Yeah, that's true. Darth Plato, I am with you until you said we haven't lost our religion. I don't consider morality and religion synonymous. And while I'm probably with you, Enigma, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding Darth Plato, I don't think they equate morality and religion. But anyway, there it is. Darth Plato's already addressed that. I will let you two just debate that out if you want to. So, what's the next thing? We've established that there's a decline in religiosity. We've established that there's a correlation between maybe not religiosity, but spirituality and mental health. What does it mean for us then when the U.S. church membership falls below majority for the first time? The highlight in 2020, 47% of U.S. adults belong to a church, which is down more than 20 points from the turn of the century. So basically a point a year, it looks like. American memberships in houses of worship continued to decline last year, dropping below 50% for the first time in Gallup's 8-decade trend. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 50% in 2018 and 70% in 1999. So here's a spiffy graph. It looks like we peaked at 76% somewhere just toward a little bit after the end of World War II. And then it declined a little, and it declined a little. I remember back in the 80s, people were just hopping up and down. We're down to 68%. Oh my gosh. And then now it's down to 47%. As many Americans celebrate Easter and Passover the week of this article, Gallup updates 2019 analysis. We've already talked about the stats. Decline in membership tied to increase in lack of religious affiliation. The decline in church membership is primarily a function of the increasing number of Americans who express no religious preference. Over the past 2 decades, the percentage of Americans who do not identify with any religion has grown from 8% in 98 to 2000 to 13% between 2008 and 10 and 21% over the past 3 years. As would be expected, Americans without a religious preference are highly unlikely to belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque, although a small proportion, 4% in the 2018 to 20 data, say they do. I find it interesting that Richard Dawkins, of all people, goes to church. I really don't know. I've never known what to do with that information. I'm just throwing that out there. Make of it whatever you want. Enigma, I agree. Every human understands morality, which is what C.S. Lewis discussed. You do not get to call something evil unless you already have a concept of what good is, which must come from something that is beyond us. Darth Plato, Lewis was quoting Plato. Actually, you can't know what a crooked line is unless you first know what a straight line is. Enigma Severus, right. Lewis continued the idea about God. If God existed, then he must not be a very good God because of how the world is. But Lewis realized, where did I get the concept of good and bad? That concept is not from human design, definitely not from evolution. If it were, it would always be evolving, which it is not. Augustine talked about that first, Darth Plato and Enigma Severus. This is never a culture. Yeah, I would, if any of you knows of a culture that glorifies cowardice, please let me know. But yeah, that's very nearly a universal. If we thought long enough, we might find a story where the coward still ends up okay, but most stories are not very keen on cowards. Enigma Severus, I agree. I've read them as well. However, Lewis makes it much more layperson friendly. Darth Plato, relativism may not praise cowardice, but it mocks courage. That's an interesting point. That is an interesting point. Church membership is strongly correlated with age. 66% of traditionalists, American adults born before 1946, belong to a church, compared with 58% of baby boomers, 50% of those in Generation X, and 36% of millennials. The limited data Gallup has on church membership among the portion of Generation Z that has reached adulthood are so far showing church membership rates similar to those for millennials. The decline in church membership then appears largely tied to population change, with those in older generations who were likely to be church members being replaced in the U.S. adult population with people in younger generations who are less likely to belong. The change has become increasingly apparent in recent decades because millennials and Gen Z are further apart from traditionalists in their church membership rates than baby boomers and Generation X. Each year, the younger generations are making up an increasingly larger part of the entire U.S. adult population. Still, population replacement doesn't fully explain the decline in church membership. I mean, really, as I've been reading this, I've been thinking, every generation talks about the irreligiosity of the young folks, and yet you end up with a bunch of the older people going to church in the end. So, I don't know. Enigma Severus, mockery is the refuge for someone who no longer has an argument. Yeah, as well as don't forget gaslighting and don't forget attempted political assassinations. Also depends on what you mean by cowardice. Yeah, that's true. You're right about the layperson point. We would need to have a prologum. I'm afraid I don't know what that means. I'm so sorry for my ignorance. We would need to have a prolegomena to define those terms. I feel like an idiot, but that's okay. I have grown used to being one. Here we go. Changes in church membership over time. I won't read this whole thing, but the traditionalists are down 11%. Baby boomers are down 9%. Generation X is down 12%. Millennials, we just don't know enough about, I guess, because it says that they're non-applicable. Millennials, you need not apply. Since the turn of the century, there's been a near doubling in the percentage of traditionalist baby boomers and Gen Xers with no religious affiliation. So the decline is across all the ages. And according to this, is in all major subgroups. So among religious groups, the decline in membership is steeper among Catholics than Protestants. Catholics are down 18 points, Protestants are down 9. This mirrors the historical changes in church attendance Gallup has documented among Catholics, with sharp declines among Catholics but not among Protestants. Gallup does not have sufficient data to analyze the trends for other religious faiths. And here we have a great big breakdown. I won't go through all of it, but I mean, every group that they have listed, men, women, non-Hispanic, whites, non-Hispanic blacks, college graduates. The biggest, let's see what the biggest is here. It looks like 25% Democrats, 25% fewer Democrats, 25% fewer Easterners. So the left coast is one of the big sources of the decline, but it's all around. Smallest in the South as far as regions, but still all around. And it looks like the smallest decline percentage-wise is just simply Protestants. So we're bleeding slower than them. Yay! The smaller declines seen among conservatives and other subgroups are largely attributable to more modest change among older generations within those groups. Hispanic church membership was 37%, among the lowest for any major subgroup. I would not have thought that. Interesting. I don't know that it matters, but I did not see that coming. Implications. The U.S. remains a religious nation with more than 7 in 10 affiliating with some type of organized religion, which kind of contradicts what they just said up here. Anyway, more than 7 in 10 affiliate. Okay, so basically they affiliate, but they're not attending, if I'm understanding that correctly. Prolegomena is an introductory work in order to explain which terms are being used in which way, so that the writer is not having to explain what they mean by each special word being used. I knew I should have known what that was. I think I've heard the term before. I guess I'm just getting old. Badly written. Oh, prolegom. Okay, gotcha. Accounting sheep. Hey, welcome, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I hope you find something entertaining or informative here. We're talking about the decline of institutional religion and whether or not that's good, whether or not that's bad, what are the implications, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, I'll probably give my very biased analysis of a video, and then we'll call it a stream. To be fair, what's the point in joining a church that doesn't believe in its own religion anymore? I would concur with that. I think that's one of the things that C.S. Lewis talked about, and it's one of the reasons why I have to be a little bit careful here, because I don't want to sound like I'm crayfishing, but sometimes when I'm hearing a pastor or for example, Richard Dawkins, he's an atheist, and I'm not saying that to get on to him or to say that he's bad or wrong, but he still goes to church, and it makes me wonder why. I mean, and he says, well, he appreciates the good aspects of church, and I'm like, but you deny anything that those good things are based off of. I don't get it. I don't get it. Far fewer, now less than half, have a formal membership. So, okay. So I guess what that means is someone will say, well, I believe roughly like a Baptist does, but I don't belong to any Baptist church, or something like that. While it is possible that part of the decline seen in 2020 was temporary and related to the coronavirus pandemic, continued decline in future decades seems inevitable given the much lower levels of religiosity and church membership among younger versus older generations of adults. Churches are only as strong as their membership. That's really well put. And are dependent on their members for financial support and service to keep operating. Because it is unlikely that people who do not have a religious preference will become church members, the challenge for church leaders is to encourage those who do affiliate with a specific faith to become formal and active church members. While precise numbers of church closures are elusive, a conservative estimate is that thousands of U.S. churches are closing each year. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. I'm about to get cryptic. I'm about to go across the line. We're making gravy without the lumps. I'm about to get out of the boring part of the talk. A 2017 Gallup study found churchgoers citing sermons as the primary reason they attended church. Majorities also said spiritual programs geared toward children and teenagers, community outreach, and volunteer opportunities. And I didn't mean outrage, I meant outreach. And dynamic leaders were also factors in their attendance. A focus on some of these factors may also help local church leaders encourage people who share their faith to join their church. So there's the boring Gallup analysis. What are y'all's thoughts before I dive into the more sensationalistic aspects of this? Enigma Severus, I took a class on the most influential religions. Logic was used very much to demonstrate the self-refuting practices and spiritual convictions. Hey, TPR, Dr. Spider, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming here. I hope you find this somewhat informative, mildly entertaining. There's a distance between religion, doctrine, and morals. Enigma Severus agrees. Everybody's saying hi. Hello, hello again. We're up to 11 people. Huzzah! Can I not bore you and scare you away? Let's find out. Let's start with this. I shared in an earlier stream that roughly every 2 weeks, a church in France closes down. And while it's been exaggerated, there's a meme or a map. There's a map that's out that purports to show all of the acts of church vandalism or church, basically some kind of criminal activity that involves a church. And Snopes was keen on letting us know that was not true, in that not all of these are churches that burnt down, as people often try to make it say, but these are just crimes. But then when you look at it, it was a pretty freaking ginormous amount of things. And I got curious, is that just France, or is that going on elsewhere? I did find that something similar, and this is an older article, so I do not know if this is still going on or not, but Canada is experiencing something. Accounting Sheep, did I just hear you say outraged, outreach? I didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. CBC, I'm not sure. I don't know much about this organization, but they did an investigation, find steep rise in church fires since reports of potential graves at residential schools. 33 Canadian churches burned since May 2021. This article was written. Oh, this is a recent article, January 10 of 2024. So in 3 years, roughly, there's been 33 churches burned down. So far, 24 are confirmed arsons. That the others, I assume, were accidental or something. Chief Clarence Louis of the Osceos Indian Band stands in front of the charred remains of St. Gregory's Church in Osceos, British Columbia. Though he doesn't have much use for Catholicism, Louis says he's still angry that someone torched the church. They give a trigger warning here. So if anyone's going to be triggered, now is the time to go and either watch Moira tell you probably much more disturbing things, or, something like that. Oh, yeah, John Ponderera. That's kind of what I thought it would be, but I couldn't find it. So It's their mainstream media. So Canadian mainstream media is reporting this. In a barren field of sagebrush alongside a road through the Osoyoos Indian Band, Chief Clarence Louis stands atop a concrete pad and surveys the rubble in front of him. This used to be the front entrance to St. Gregory's, the simple wooden church that hosted countless community celebrations, dinners, and religious services on the reserve just north of the Canadian-U.S. borders in central British Columbia. The church had stood for more than 100 years as a symbol of the Catholic faith, but on June 21, 2021, someone burned it to the ground. Louis recalled being forced to go to the church as a child to learn the Word of God. He didn't like it. And here's the church before it burned. "We were heathens, right?" he said from the church steps. "We were savages. We had to come in here and have the white man save our souls. That's what we were taught." While he doesn't hide his contempt for Catholicism, he's angry that someone torched St. Gregory's, which was the second church that burned that night. Hours earlier, someone also set fire to the Sacred Heart Church on the Penticton Indian Band about 40 kilometers north of Osoyoos. "I was upset that some res punks did arson," he told CBC News, pointing the finger directly at local youth from area reserves, including his own. "I don't think white people came here and burned this down. No one has ever been charged in either fires." CBC News review has revealed that dozens of churches in Canada have burned down. Dozens more have been vandalized. Other communities in Western Canada, including some First Nations, also have been impacted by the fires. CBC News has examined 33 Canadian churches that burned to the ground since May 2021. Just 2 were ruled accidental. That's wild. So investigators have determined that 24 were deliberately set while others are still under investigation. Okay, so 24 were deliberate, 2 were accidental, and they just don't know about the others. A researcher and some community leaders suggest Canada's colonial history and recent discoveries of potential burial sites at former residential schools may have lit the fuse. A revelation in Kamloops. I won't be able to pronounce this, but in 2021, this Native American nation, I don't mean to any disrespect, I just don't want to butcher the name, near Kamloops, British Columbia, released a statement revealing that researchers found 215 anomalies in the ground that suggested unmarked graves. Leaders said they believed they were unmarked graves belonging to Indigenous children forced to attend the school. Louis grew up in a time when others from his reserve were taken to the school, which was run by the Catholic Church until 1969. It's estimated more than 150,000 children were sent to the schools in Canada from the 1830s until the last school closed in 1997. In addition to the schools, Catholic missionaries in the early 1900s built churches like St. Gregory's on reserves throughout Canada, and priests and nuns were sent to teach the Catholic faith to Indigenous people. While many became devoted followers, today there are deep divisions regarding the role the church played in setting up residential schools. TRP Dr. Spider on iconic pastoral church, and Enigma Severus triggered. Find a safe place, and the Enigma Severus single women don't like me, sadly. Well, I can't think of anything clever to say to that. Insert clever comment here. A monument stands on the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in Kamloops, British Columbia, on May 27, 2021. The tribe released a report later that summer, noting, I can't talk today. The tribe released a report later that summer, noting that about 200 potential burial sites had been found during a search of the site using ground-penetrating radar. At the outset of the church fires, Many indigenous and political leaders were quick to blame unresolved anger over the situation. To burn things down is not our way, Perry Bellegarde said in July 2021. At the time, he was the national chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Our way is to build relationships and come together. That month, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, everybody's hero, yay, let's celebrate. He commented on the fire, saying, "The destruction of places of worship is unacceptable and it must stop." But it hasn't stopped. In the weeks after the announcement in Kamloops, 11 churches in Western Canada were burned to the ground in cases determined to be arson by investigators. CBC News examined police and court records along with media reports and found 33 fires that destroyed churches in Canada from May 2021 until December 2023. This is an increase from the 14 fires that destroyed churches in Canada between January 1, 2019 to May 2021 that were found using those same records and reports. Just 2 of the 33 fires were found to be accidental. They're repetitive yet redundant. Here's a spiffy graph that they give. Confirmed arson, suspected arson, accidental, and under investigation. So 24 confirmed, 5 suspected. Interesting. 14 fires took place on reserves and First Nations, and 13 were in small or rural towns, which, TRP Dr. Spider, to burn things down is not our way. Yeah, he sounds like a very wise person. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm like disrespectful to the Native Americans in this, because if nothing else, I've dated a Native American. She was, even though we didn't work out, she was a wonderful person, very intelligent. And I hate the things that have happened to them. And I wish I knew the solution, but anyway. 14 of the fires were in First Nation reserves, 13 were in small and rural towns, and 6 were in urban centers. Alberta RCMP also charted a significant rise in overall arson attacks on church properties in the province. There were 8 fires between May 2019 and May 2021, and 29 fires between June 2021 and September 2023. These figures are limited to the areas of Alberta under the jurisdiction of the RCMP and include all cases involving arson and attempted arson at churches. Corporal Troy Savinkoff with the Alberta RCMP, said although there are potential motivators police are aware of, they haven't been able to draw any conclusions. I would conclude that some people are very angry at the church, but maybe that's a little too flippant. It would appear that the motivations for these individuals thus far is varied as the people themselves, he said. They come from all walks of civil life, many different backgrounds. Paulina Johnson, the scholar and researcher at the University of Alberta with the community of Masquatchis, about 100 kilometers south of Edmonton, says she understands why some of the fires have continued to happen. It's on fire because no one's really addressing the truth, she said. She focuses her research on the impact of colonial institutions in Indigenous history. This isn't to say that the arsons and the fires are justified, but it speaks to a bigger symbolic reality. Johnson argues that Indigenous people who have long been silenced are reaching out, sometimes in destructive ways. It gives them a voice, because for the longest time, Canada hasn't really actually acknowledged us. Enigma Severus, don't old yeller our universe TVA. You know, one of the reasons why I've gotten more, I don't think I would have ever moved so far right so fast if I hadn't felt so restricted before. And so I'm not at all condoning fires. Please don't go out and make fires. It is totally not productive. Even though I love the song Arsonist Lullaby, don't do it. It makes you angry to feel like you've not been heard. It makes you angry to feel like you have something important to say and someone just dismisses you out of hand. The whole debate's been had in one scenario. It's one of the reasons why I'm so upset. So I don't mean to equate that. It's not the same as what happened to the Native Americans, but I do get it. Enigma Severus would not burn things down. The word in Greek for church is referring to the human, not the building. Yes, even Christ says, even the gates of hell can't destroy his church. And fire is where? It's in hell. I don't know that I'm going to read too much more about that. Maybe a little bit. It looks a little bit interesting. I won't read about the cases, but I'll skip to the community's grief. The feature that set Morinville, I'm having a senior moment. I should know this province of Canada, but I can't remember it. Apart from similar prairie towns was the dominating presence of Saint Jean Baptiste Church. Built in the 19th century French ecclesiastical style, its giant bell tower instilled a sense of grandeur on the town's main street. The first Mass was held there on New Year's Day, 1908. On June 30, 2021, it was reduced to a smoldering pile of ash and brick. This is the church on fire. The fire, which started in the middle of the night, was immediately considered suspicious by RCMP. Ron Cuss, the community's former fire chief, helped sift through the ruins. As a former provincial fire investigator, he's been keen to find the cause of the fire, but as an active member of the local church community, he also wanted to salvage historical artifacts. We were able to retrieve what we could, but the structure has burned so hot that I couldn't even find a piece of the pew, he said. No one has ever been charged for the fire, but Cuss says parishioners aren't looking to assign blame. Why would we single out one part of a community and target them for it? Cuss said. We know that what happened was wrong. Instead, they're focused on rebuilding. Bringing back the bells. Among material salvaged from the ashes of St. Jean Baptiste Church in Morinville were the bells that hung from the steeple for more than a century. Noreen Radford, chair of the local parish council, said the bells used to ring on the hour. It was something stable that the community really enjoyed. Here we see the melted, but only partially melted. And I say that as if this is great, the remains of the bells. The Catholic faith still runs deep in the town of 10,000, located just north of Edmonton. Sunday services, which normally attract more than 200 people, have moved to a school gymnasium. Not ideal, says Radford, noting people miss the church, even though we say it's just a building. It has a significance in both our parish community and the community at large. Immediately after the fire, church leaders began fundraising. They plan to break ground on a new church in the spring with a goal of hearing the church bells ring again in December 2025, just in time for Christmas. Other communities aren't as keen to rebuild. On the Asoyos Indian Band, a small group of Catholic followers now meet Sundays at the band council office. Not enough to warrant a church to replace St. Gregory's, says Louis. Even if we did build it, punks would come in and burn it down, probably. So what do you think about that? Canada, while it's not as bad as what was going on in France, Canada is losing churches. Enigma Severus, my dad always said he had chemo brain anytime that he wanted to do something illegal, like driving on the sidewalk to get a picture next to a warship. Okay. I feel like there's a story behind that one. So we know that our neighbor Canada is losing churches. What's going on in the United States? We have here the Christian Post reporter, 436 acts of hostility against U.S. churches documented in 2023. This was just a tornado. This isn't enemy activity. Authorities investigate the severe vandalism committed on June 8, 2023 at Fowler United Methodist Church of Annapolis, Maryland. Hostility against churches in the United States appears to be on the rise. And honestly, that's, to me, the real concern. It's not... well, anyway, maybe we'll analyze it a little more later. What really concerns me, though, is hate. You know, if you want to drift away from the faith, that's one thing. But hate is a totally different thing. And this is one of the things that's led me on this journey here was people who I'd never heard say a hateful word in their entire lives saying hateful things, and likely not recognizing that they were hateful. I'm often curious how often we are that way. According to a recent Family Research Council report that identified 436 incidents against churches in 2023, more than double the amount reported by the group in 2022 and 8 times the number identified in 2018. The Conservative Christian Advocacy Organization released its latest hostility against churches report this month, which FRC updated to include hostility incidents from the calendar year 2023. The organization has collected data about acts of hostility against churches since 2018, identifying 915 such incidents over the past 6 years. Between January and November 2023, FRC reported that at least 315 occurrences of vandalism, 75 arson attacks or attempts, 10 gun-related incidents, 20 bomb threats, and 37 other incidents took place at churches. According to the report, 17 of the incidents fell into more than one category, with vandalism and arson being the most common combination. There's a common connection between the growing religious persecution abroad and the rapidly increasing hostility toward churches here at home. Our government's policies, FRC President Tony Perkins said in a Tuesday statement. His words, not mine. Take them for what they're worth. The indifference abroad to the fundamental freedom of religion is rivaled only by the increasing antagonism toward the moral absolutes taught by Bible-believing churches here in the U.S., which is fomenting this environment of hostility toward churches, he continued. According to FRC, the rise in hostility against churches has neither slowed nor plateaued since its inaugural report in 2022, but has accelerated instead. Reported hostile acts against churches were widespread across 48 states and the District of Columbia in 2023. Incidents were more likely to occur in states with larger populations, the report notes. While Hawaii and Wyoming had no reported incidents, that's interesting. So, bluest of the blue, Hawaii has not had any reported incidents. So, take that for what it's worth. California, imagine that, had the most, 33, while Texas was second with 28 incidents. That's fascinating. The report documented an act of vandalism in June that caused over $100,000 in damages to the Fowler United Methodist Church, a historically black church in Annapolis, Maryland. Vandals ripped pages. I hate that. I'm so sorry about that. Vandals ripped pages from Bibles and hymnals, scattering the torn pages across the floors and pews. Enigma Severus. Curtis pulled out his Spock quotes for this stuff. Yes, fascinating. In addition to ripping the upholstered pews and taking down a large wooden cross, the vandals removed a Christian flag from its stand and stripped the church's outdoor sign of its lettering. In Ohio, several incidents appeared to be related to Issue 1, a ballot measure to amend the state constitution to establish a right to abortion. According to the report, someone pulled a "Vote No" sign out of the ground at Cincinnati's St. Monica St. George Church and threw it in a dumpster, which I get it, but that's not such a very big deal, at least not compared to the other. In a separate incident, another Cincinnati-based church, St. Bartholomew Church, someone removed between 6 and 8 "Vote No" signs and replaced them with "Vote Yes" signs. So irritating, but kind of minor compared to arson or $100,000 worth of damage. The report lists a couple of acts of vandalism with anti-Israel or anti-Semitic sentiment after the Hamas terror group's October 7 surprise attack against Israel. In November, a "We Stand With Israel" sign was spray painted with the words "Israel's genocide" on the property of the church at Decatur Heights in Decatur, Georgia. The report notes a dozen incidents included satanic imagery or symbols. I was going to make a comment, but no, I'm not going to. In July, vandals broke into Most Holy Trinity Catholic Church of El Paso, Texas. Down in the West Texas town of El Paso, we are dealing with satanic cults. And left behind satanic imagery, including writing the number 666 on multiple items. Crosses inside the church were also turned upside down, and holy oil was dumped out. In October, someone spray painted the words "Devil has risen" and a symbol like a pentagram on the buildings of Jesus Worship Center in Jennings, Louisiana. Man, they're kind of being a little pedantic here, although I get it. These aren't things that I'm going to be supportive of. Vandals targeted multiple nativity scenes. As for the 75 incidents of arson, attempted arson, or fires with unknown causes, incidents ranged from small fires that were quickly contained to fires that completely destroyed church buildings. In most cases, motivation was unknown. In June, Ascension of the Lord Romanian Orthodox Church of Hayward, California was broken into. Several religious artifacts were set on fire, including a Bible and a crucifix. The charred items and ashes were left around an altar. I dated an Orthodox woman at one time that they've got an interesting religion. I do recommend, if you ever just want a different church experience. Again, I'm not telling you to join any church at all. I'm just saying if you wanted something different, they're different, and I don't mean that in necessarily a bad way. It was very interesting. 666 is not even the correct number, slackers. Although nobody was hurt in most of the 10 gun-related incidents reported by FRC, the report also lists the shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, a Presbyterian school in which 6 people, including 3 students, were killed by a trans-identified shooter. Ariel Del Turco, director of FRC's Center for Religious Liberty and the report's author, believes that the effect of these acts of hostility is religious intimidation. They send the message that churches are not wanted in the community or respected in general. Our culture is demonstrating a growing disdain for Christianity and core Christian beliefs, and acts of hostility against churches could be a physical manifestation of that, the author stated. Regardless of the motivations of these crimes, everyone should treat churches and all houses of worship with respect and affirm the importance of religious freedom for all Americans. FRC documented at least 420 acts of hostility against churches in the United States in its December 2022 report. In its previous analysis, FRC assessed available data between January 2018 and September 2022 documenting 397 incidents across 45 U.S. states and Washington, D.C. According to the FRC's April supplemental report, 69 acts of vandalism against churches occurred in the first quarter of 2023, an increase in the number of attacks compared to previous years. The supplemental report is built on previous data published in December of 2022. So, definitely something going on. And I don't doubt that there are people, well, all that religious dogma, all the abuse in the churches, and I get it. I mean, not to this extent, but I get some the anger towards some of the activities that have happened in churches. But I would suggest that this has been, the church has been an underpinning of our society for a long time. A lot of the ideas of freedom have come from religious movements, the Quakers, especially, people who wanted to worship as they wanted to. That's why they came here. TRP Dr. Spider is outing himself as a Gnostic. And we'll still say that that's not cool. No, it's not. It's not. Again, I'm not here trying to persuade anyone to be any particular faith. Hopefully I don't offend any of my fellow Christians when I say, be a Gnostic and go in peace. I don't ever want to mock anybody's religion, with the possible exception of Satanists, but I digress. But the essential thing is, even though I've established it in a very boring way, there are some terrible things going on. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to explore. I'm going to share a video of Tulsi Gabbard. As some of you may know, she was the darling of the Democratic Party. And again, this is not to suggest that you can't be a Democrat and a Christian at the same time, or that you can't vote for Kamala and be a Christian at the same time. Having said that, one of the reasons I've taken my path recently is because I've seen so many classical liberals bail from the Democrat Party and basically try to tell us that things are not cool and not kosher. This is, in fact, the segment where I'm going to be all kind of biased. So if you don't want to hear it, feel free to drop out. If you want to debate it, please feel free to do so respectfully in the chat. But I'm going to share this video. Tulsi Gabbard being interviewed by Chris Williamson. I love his podcast, and I love her as a human being. She was the darling of the Democrats, and then she dared to basically defy their ideas, and she learned that there was no room for debate. There was no room for anything but, by the party line or else. And anyway, I will share what she says. John, you can't vote for Kamala and be conscious at the same time. Well, I don't know that I'm going to go quite that far, but I would suggest that it is difficult for me to understand how a well-informed person, or at least someone who says that they're well-informed, is capable of voting for her, unless there's only a couple of conclusions that I draw. One is that you just hate Trump so much, you just hate him so much that you'll vote for anybody else. And don't get me wrong, we have the same thing going on the right. You have people that would vote for him no matter who he was running against. And I don't know that that's cool. I wish we had had better candidates in this, but we've got what we've got. Accounting sheep. We have well-informed voters now? No. Well, yeah, sadly, and you have a point. Well, let's see what Tulsi has to say about why the left has abandoned religion. And yes, I can hear my liberal friends now, but the right's gone too far and they're not, this isn't what Christ preached. And maybe that's true. But I honestly think, let me put it this way, who's burning down the other side's edifices? I mean, maybe that black church, and I hope to heck that whoever did that's found. That could have been some crazy KKKer. I'm getting to where I kind of resent them being called right wing. But then again, it's really not about right versus left anymore. It's about statist versus people who value freedom. Anyway, I keep delaying. This is what Tulsi has to say.
I think to the political discourse at the moment is the strained relationship that people on the left have with God and faith, and this almost antagonistic relationship with religion and belief, but certain religions. What do you make of that? How do you sort of
I have a whole chapter in my book on this exactly. And in that, you know, I talk about how and refer to, once again, the history of the Democratic Party and how it really has grown as of late, where it was once a party that there was no aversion to mention of God. And this was the party that I joined. It was a more inclusive party. It welcomed people from all different religious backgrounds and faiths and different beliefs. To now fast forward to, and it was something that happened over time. I mean, Jimmy Carter was an evangelical Christian, and even when he was elected president, there were some people around him who were just like, oh, I don't know.
And I want to say that Tulsi Gabbard is actually Hindu. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So it's not that she's hopping up and down here and trying to proselytize you and tell you to become a Christian, but she does have the wisdom and the insight to know that we're really not going to get anywhere by persecuting Christians. And I hear what somebody's going to, well, yeah, but you've persecuted all these other minorities. Number one, I ain't persecuted jack or shit. I've just survived. But number two, even if you want to hold a particular group accountable, you surely see the insanity that we're at. And if you don't, maybe we need to have a deeper talk. But when churches are burning down and when you basically, when you start wondering if Fox's Book of Martyrs is going to come back into style, you know, maybe we're going to have the Colosseums and stuff. Maybe I'm exaggerating too far, but the America I knew, it wasn't even something that would have been considered. We had freedom of religion. You could build your mosque. You could build your Hindu temple. I've walked through the Buddhist monastery in Broken Arrow. It's a beautiful place. Enigma Sever says we still have really problematic people. Tulsi is his future wife. Not if I get to her first. And Enigma wants me to get her number. But would I share it with him? I don't think so. TRP, Dr. Spider, why did the left abandon the church? Nothing outside the state. That's it. And yeah, John confirms she's a Hindu. Accounting sheep, it's not so much the left has abandoned religion. It's more that they've intentionally taken every position diametrically opposed to it.
This is like too much. And this is something that has increased over time to where in the last Democratic convention that was held, obviously it was held virtually during the whole COVID thing, but even saying the Pledge of Allegiance, they made a big show of eliminating, saying one nation, awkward silence, refused to say under God.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Even as they said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, interesting.
Over Zoom. So, you know, seeing how today's Democratic Party is, you know, they are targeting Catholics and Christians primarily, trying to eliminate like God, really any mention of God from every facet of public life.
And this is where I come back to censorship. And I don't know if the big tech companies have done this, because I haven't seen lots of people telling me, well, I was trying to talk about God and then I got censored. And maybe it's happened and I just don't know it. But I think it's problematic when you try to take words out of things, when you try to edit history, edit the past, even if you don't believe in God, and even if you have legitimate reasons to not believe in God. I think most of the people in this community will admit that it's very problematic not to admit that history has been strongly influenced by people who did believe in God, and sometimes in bad ways. You know, we have to own that. But just doing this Orwellian thing where, well, we're not going to talk about God, I don't think that's the answer at all. Enigma Severus agrees with Accounting Sheet. And the system keeps blocking your comments from me. What? Am I going to have to eat my words? Is YouTube censoring people talking about God? Please let me know. Evil algorithm. I do think it's interesting what the algorithm does. I mean, I've had some success, as I pointed out in the earlier part of the post that I'm making here. I've got 3,000 views now on my talk about communism versus capitalism, and I'm very gratified for that. But then it seems like most of my things only get like 100 things. I'm like, what was it that was different about that? They know. And Enigma, I don't see what he says till you post it on the screen for me. Oh, really? Okay. The system keeps blocking. Okay, interesting. That's weird.
You had Kamala Harris when she was a senator on the Judiciary Committee, going after and attacking and ultimately opposing a nominee for a judgeship, specifically because he was an observant and devout Catholic and a member of the Knights of Columbus.
What the fuck is that?
The Knights of Columbus?
Yeah, what is
it is...
I may skip that unless you want to know more about the Knights of Columbus, even though maybe I shouldn't censor. I'll go ahead and let you hear. They're a Catholic organization. If memory serves, they're similar to the Masons, but they're Catholics, because for some reason the Masonic Lodge doesn't allow Catholics. Don't ask me. I didn't invent the rules.
It is an all-male organization. I don't think it's not I don't know if it's governed by the Catholic Church, but it is a Catholic organization.
Knights of Columbus.
And
that sounds cool.
It does sound cool.
Way cooler than me and my friends.
But it's a community like service-oriented organization. They go and do good things in the community, essentially. But it is centered around a very a Catholic system.
Give it a less intimidating name. It sounds Masonic and dangerous and spooky.
They did the same thing with Amy Coney Barrett, who's now in the Supreme Court, with now since passed away, but Senator Dianne Feinstein.
So here's my question to you. And specifically, if any of my friends who are listening, and I know I say a lot of things that likely upset you, and I hate that. I don't know what to do about that, but I'm not going to be silenced. I'm not going to be silenced anymore. You insist that Trump has this loyalty test, that you have to be absolutely loyalty or you're out. He's surrounded himself with Hindus. He's surrounded himself with Christians. Elon Musk, I think he's one of those non-people that they were talking about. I don't think Elon Musk, I think he's just beginning to flirt with the idea of spirituality. So I don't think I understand what you mean when you say that. But I would contrast, we're Democrats. We don't want to nominate you to the Supreme Court because you're Catholic. Because you don't, I mean, it sounds to me like, I'm not going to say that there's no truth to it, that the right never does it. But I think that the left, that the Democrats do it more often and frankly in a more dangerous and autocratic fashion than the Trump organization. I won't even call them Republicans anymore because I think that word has lost all real meaning. Accounting sheep. I hear the left is trying to get them to change their name to Knights of Indigenous Peoples Day. I wouldn't doubt it.
Warned against her when she went for confirmation before the same Judiciary Committee, saying, I'm concerned the dogma lives loudly within you. All of these things going against our Constitution, which...
And the dogma doesn't live loudly within Kamala. No, there's no dogma there. She is a totally open-minded and open-hearted person.
Says there shall be no religious test to serve in any public office.
Now, listen to that. Maybe let's play that again.
Says there shall be no religious test to serve in any public office.
There shall be no religious test. Now, I hear my left-leaning friends. They insist that Trump is going to do that. And I've become convinced that that's a lie, that he has no such intent at all. But number two, if it was true, all it would mean is that we've got two different people, two different religions, and each one's going to demand loyalty. One is this Christiano, whatever the hell you want to call Trumpism, and the other one is essentially statism. The state is God. You will obey the state. You don't really have any freedoms or liberties unless the state gives them to you. And I guess you got to ask yourself, if the lie is true, then which of those states is more dangerous? But I have come to believe from my researches that it is a lie. If he has any loyalty oath, it might be for people in the FBI to take an oath to guard the Constitution or something, but that's only reasonable. It's what they should be doing anyway.
Period. And it unfortunately, it goes against kind of the whole concept of freedom of religion, you can have your beliefs. You can be atheist, agnostic, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever your choice is. That is literally the concept of freedom, is not that you're not allowed to practice your religion in public and it's got to be just a private thing. You can do what you want.
Where's this come from? Is this a contamination zone from trying to maybe upend some of the history of the United States? Is it that, the sort of love of country and patriotism is right-coded, and so is maybe religious participation right-coded? And if we're not that, then it means that we're the I don't understand, given that there's so many Americans who are religious, Christian, it just seems like you're shooting yourself in the foot and the face. Why would you do that?
A lot of the things that they're pushing.
And I do suggest that as well. I think that the left has pushed way too far too fast on some things. One of the things that made the left so successful was their capacity to be patient, to be incremental. You know, we'll get a little more of our agenda each year. But I think they've lost patience. I think they want it all. They want it all, and they want it now. Enigma Severus, no, Trump won't do that. Secondly, this day that we fear about persecution is coming, which we hope is not now, but rather later. Either way, maximum effort. And I know you're getting ready as best you can and doing a better job than I am. TRP Dr. Spider chat is broke. Roko's basilisk is on the loose. All right. Counting Sheep, I did not see your comment until Curtis put it on the screen about the Knights of Indigenous. Gotcha. Counting Sheep, I must have offended the gods of YouTube and they think I'm spam. Yeah. On one hand, I'm whining about not having as much success as I'd like, but on the other, one, I just need to do better. I just need to take accountability, and even if it is a thing and a fault of YouTube, I won't get any better if I don't improve. But number two, if I learned the hard way on my very first blog. There's this one time when usually I got 8 or 10 views on each post, and then one day I wrote about the cannibal. If anyone remembers that, the guy who ate the homeless guy's face, and that just took off. I mean, for me anyway, it didn't exactly go viral, but I got 300 views in the very first day, and WordPress took me down because they decided I was a spammer, and so I had to call them and be like, "Look, if I've violated something, let me know. I'll fix it." Yada yada. But it was just out of nowhere, I got 300 views and they didn't like it. So that does happen. You see, I saw that. John Ponterero, me to Enigma. We Accounting Sheep's Columbus comment. Curtis's face is spam in a can with a ham in the pan. Okay, moving on. Spam, boiled spam, spammity, spam, 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 spammity, spam, spam, spam. Yeah, we went from deep intellectual things about religion to spam. That's what I love about this community. It's awesome. You guys are great.
Fall into that category because they don't make sense, and they're so insanely radical that that there are very negative consequences to those policies, just at a basic human level. We talked about some of them already. Ultimately at its heart, and again, I don't find any logic or rationale to the actual reasonings that they're giving, but at its heart, when you have a party that is controlled by people who don't believe in objective truth, that
I think that's the real core key right there. And I know Enigma's talked about it quite a bit. When you lose that the belief in any objective reality, I think you're on a very slippery slope. Because then the great thing about not believing in objective reality is anything you think or believe is likely to be true. But then this is one of the things that exasperates me. You will insist that I think the same way you do, that I'll like the same things you do, that I'll evaluate things by the same criteria you do. But yet, when I try to talk about my own criteria or my own likes or my own beliefs, well, everything's relative. Everything's relative. It's very different when it's your own stuff. Accounting Sheep, maybe it's just angry that I couldn't spell indigenous. Spoon. All right.
For example, that there are biological differences between men and women, that they want to be the authority that tells us what is.
how did we get here? I really want to know that. How did we get to a point where we can't define what a man and a woman is? And this is not to trash the LGBTQ people. If they want to live the way they want to live, if they want to think the way they want to think, absolutely, knock yourself out. But I think, with the exception of some hermaphrodites, I think very nearly 100% of people are either one thing or the other. They may have aspects. In fact, I think we all have aspects of the other sex in us, but frankly, you're one or the other. Now, anyway, accounting sheep, their reasoning is purely rebellion against whatever the last generation believed in. It's a party full of daddy issues. All right.
Is true and what is not true. They want to be the authority that tells us what is acceptable information, what is not, misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, violent speech, acceptable speech, whatever the case may be. They see themselves as that authority, and they recognize that those who believe in a higher power, whatever that may be, are not going to buy into them being that higher power or that authority.
So I've started reading the Bible again, and I'm still not as I haven't made it as a habit like I want to, but there are not many days that go by that I don't read it anymore. I hadn't read it in almost 2 years, and because I was angry and all this stuff. I'm not going to go into that. But the book that I read most recently was Esther. And the reason I want to bring it up is, you may know the story, but essentially part of the story is there's this man named Haman, and he's a real big dog. The king has him as his right-hand man, basically gets everything his own way. And he's walking down the street, and I'm having a senior moment. What was his name? Anyway, there's a Jew that had been captured from Judea when Babylon attacked Jerusalem. And he would not get up and bow down to him. Everyone else did, but he didn't. And so this made Haman very angry, and he decided that he had to be hung. And it was a whole big thing in the story that the Jew ended up saving the king's life, and the king honored him. And then it turned out that Haman had decided to do a genocide of all the Jews, and then it turned out that the king had married a Jew, and she was like, "Hey, please don't kill my people." And so, yeah, it ended up being Haman that was hung. Not a real great retelling, but where I'm going with this, that is the way people who are overly proud are. You had, by God, better bow down to me. And if you don't, my life is just a big, horrible nightmare. And I can't deal with the fact that there are people who won't bow down to me. Enigma Severus. What I find funny is the book series The Golden Compass, which I haven't read it. I know about it, but I haven't read it. The series is a response to Lewis and Christianity and fictional works. The Golden Compass series literally wants to destroy the earth and God. John Ponterero has never heard of the book, but has steered clear of the movie. Soon heard about the book. I have not read it. Enigma Severus is just so funny that humanity literally believes they can destroy a supreme being which created them. And where does that idea come from? The first one who thought he could rebel against God. I remember reading the Spawn comics for a while when they first came out in the early 90s. And I remember Spawn was basically the demon that was giving him his powers and stuff, was saying, we're devoted to the destruction of God. And I just finished reading Augustine's Confessions. And I was like, God's an eternal, all-powerful, all-encompassing being. How would it even be possible to destroy him? Now, you may not believe that God is such a thing, and I'm not going to debate that right now. If you believe that way, I respectfully, I disagree, but you can absolutely hold on to it. But if those premises are true, how would you ever destroy him? It makes no logical sense. John Pontorero, I have no interest in supporting anything like that. Enigma Severus, Golden Compass, Amber Spyglass is the one where they dialogue over destroying the church and God. And then The Knife is the last book, I think. Accounting Sheep. Yep, it's always fun when they talk about wanting to destroy something they don't even believe in. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Enigma Severus. Sorry, Golden Compass is first. The Subtle Knife is the second, which rips through multiverses. And then Amber Spyglass.
And the ultimate, influencer that people should be concerned with. And so at its core, that is where this is coming from. It comes back to power and them seeing those who believe in God or who are following their particular spiritual path or faith as not being willing to bend the knee to the power of the Democrat elite and the positions that they hold in our government.
So there's a story about William Tyndale, who was a scholar and linguist. He was the first person.
Now, my copy of Fox's Book of Martyrs was a modernized thing, so please forgive me if I end up being inaccurate. But I read about, I think it's pronounced Tyndale. Please let me know if I'm wrong. I read about him in the copy, the modernized, kind of maybe bastardized copy of the Fox's Book of Martyrs that I have. And that was very fascinating. I think it's cool that he's about to bring this up. Enigma Severus, the idea that animals with a human are the actual souls of people in the operation of ripping apart the animal or soul of people. Nothing outside the state. Yep. 1984, the state is God. Enigma Severus, and the little girl's father is the one who tries to destroy the earth, kill God with the knife, because apparently the original one who rebelled did not have the knife to destroy God. Wow. Okay.
Listen, to translate the Bible into common English from the original Hebrew and Greek. And what you had when you went to mass was a conduit between you and the priest. So if you, me and you are common peasants, and we go on Sunday to church service, our relationship with God is mediated through the priest. And because the Bible is not written in a common language, we have to go. So they've kind of centralized power in this one forcing point in the middle, which is the one person that can actually read it. And that William Tyndale was persecuted for doing that, because then the relationship had become completely decentralized. Right. It was totally accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel if what you're saying is right, it doesn't feel like that's too dissimilar. That, if you are able to get your meaning and your trust from somebody
through a direct personal relationship with God
that
versus,
is not daddy government, then maybe you don't need us so much. And it's so, like, if this stuff's true, and I'm too green behind the ears in this country to actually be able to sort of contextualize much of it, it's so unsophisticated and infantile. Like, it's so like unimpressive that the people that run the forefront of culture, the country that's behind the economic engine and all the rest of this stuff, America coughs, everyone else catches a cold, all of this, that these people are like actually really unsophisticated and stupid, and they don't understand second or third order consequences. They don't,
or do they? They're not even trying. Which makes it even worse, in my view.
Right.
If you've got someone who's
the respect to be
competent, to just try, do the work, try to figure this out. And look, we're all human. You might make a mistake. You might make a wrong decision. Got it. But these are people who aren't even, they don't care enough And this is the most disheartening and the most dangerous part. They don't even care enough to make that effort.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Maui Nui Venison. You
All
just heard
right.
our resident Hawaiian
So-
princess Tulsi talking about her home state of Hawaii, whose axis deer population is ravaging their ecosystems, and that is why I am a massive...
I think that's all that he had from Tulsi there. So essentially, at least according to her, and again, she was their darling for a while, she says that essentially they want to be the gods, they want to be the authority. And if you can't, if you accept that there's something bigger than them, then they can't be the tyrants that they want to be. Enigma Severus is played, he's played by Daniel Craig in the original movie. Oh, the father, you mean? John Pontorero, I love the content of this interview, but was it conducted on a set for a Star Wars celebration? I wonder about that. I really do. Couple more things that I wanted to share. A few more things. Hopefully this is cool, even though some of it's unrelated. I've gotten to where, like I say, I watched way too much stuff on Twitter, trying to back down a little bit of that. Don't insult my wife's decoration choices. I feel like I should have had more prepared, but this is all that I had prepared to talk about. So, and Netters is going to be on in about an hour, so maybe it's good to give us some time to rest. But I wanted to share some of the things that I've seen on Twitter, see what the community thinks. I've also, have I done it? Yes, I've finally set up a poll. Please vote. I'm tired, so I just put a couple of things in there, but let me know what you would like me to talk about next week. I should have put it in there before, but I'll give you guys here at the end the chance to tell me what you would like me to talk about next week. So, sharing Twitter. All right. Here we have Vance in an interview. I wanted to know what y'all thought
Venezuelan
of it.
gangs.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers.
Okay. Let me put this into context before I play it. Essentially, there's stories, at any rate, that there's apartment complexes in Colorado that have been taken over by Venezuelan gangs. I don't believe that is at least entirely wrong, even though I've only had it confirmed on social media until I watched this clip. Ironically, this woman's trying to establish that Vance is an idiot, and all she does is let me know that, yeah, actually something horrible is going on. Enigma Severus, I'm open to whatever you want to share. Well, hopefully within reason. TRP, Dr. Spider, I'm late to your arc. When was the tipping point? I'm sorry. Spider isn't used to my schizophrenic ways. And no, I don't actually have schizophrenia, though I know some people who do. The tipping point, essentially the tipping point was the Tulsi Gabbard interview. I don't know that I've essentially done a great job of proving my point or what have you. But my point is that a part of, I'm suggesting that maybe some of this violence is inspired by an anti-God and anti-Christian ideology that is spread largely, not exclusively, but largely by some of the left in our midst. Likely I didn't do a great job of establishing that, so I'm sorry about that. John Pontorero, photo essay of Tulsi next time? Oh, hey, well, I'm going to assume, was I smart enough to put other Or is it just more about science? Oh, yeah, more about science, more about Trump, or another topic. So unless somebody says something otherwise, another topic is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. Some more stuff about Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know about a photo essay, although I might share some of the photos. She's gorgeous. John Pontorero, they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. Enigma Severus, Spider, I think it was the hypocritical arguments by the left, meaning they literally ignore logic to justify their argument or position. And again, that is exactly what I'm saying. Thank you for being more succinct than I am. I don't want to say that the right is perfectly logical. I don't want us to all become just slavish, Trump-supporting Kool-Aid drinkers, mind-numbed robots that believe everything that he says. But yeah, I respectfully believe when you've got Weinstein saying it, when you've got Einstein saying it, not the original, but the current professor, you have academics saying that the left has abandoned logic. You get to a tipping point where I'm willing to listen because it does seem that there's some truth to it. Enigma Severus, we are in the midst of Curtis's character arc. He is on the rise, which I hope I am, but hopefully I am a benevolent tyrant. I will basically allow all of you to think exactly the way I think. I believe everything that man says because it's exactly what I wanted to hear. They are people in Philadelphia spoke about them hunting geese, which was interesting. Yeah, I heard about that too. I meant your overall arc away from the left. Oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you almost would have to watch all of these, and I don't, even though I need the watch hours and would absolutely love it if you did. I don't necessarily, I'm not going to say, well, please watch all my stuff. I'm not going to explain it here. But I started out this channel being very centrist. My effort was to be very fair because I had been pulled pretty much to the, maybe not exactly to the left, but I'd gone from being a hardcore right winger to a more centrist position because of January 6th, because of a lot of the things that the media said that I've since researched and found to not be true. And also because of, I mean, I don't want to over exaggerate this, but I felt a lot of pressure from my friends. I want to be fair to them. It's not like they were like, Curtis, you must believe the way we do, or you are cast out and unclean. But there really was kind of a pressure. There was kind of a, you voted for Trump, you're the bad guy kind of vibe. And for a while, I was very lost and confused, and maybe I still am. But I was trying to figure out, I had voted for Trump. I'd believed in Trump. I'd loved him. I'd loved his books. And then I found myself irritated with him, despising him, hating him. And I don't know that I've gotten back to loving the guy. I definitely believe that we've got to, if we're going to support him or not, we have to look at him with as realistic of a lens as we can. But the culmination of that story arc was the assassination attempt. And, before that, I always bent over backward to be fair to the two sides and basically to try to explain, both sides' viewpoints and how both sides could come to that conclusion. When the assassination attempt happened, for several weeks, for several months, I had been very afraid that we were about to have a civil war. And I was very afraid of what would happen and can I survive and what the hell am I going to do? And frankly, which side would even be right, if either? I kind of felt like neither side would be in the right. And when that bullet just barely missed him, I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but I really felt as if maybe God spared us, because I can just about promise you, whether you like him or not, whether you vote for him or not, if that bullet had killed him, I think we would be in a civil war right now. I think we would. And so then I started to investigate. I started to research my own prejudices toward him, because I wanted, I didn't want to just go solely on emotion. And, I wanted there to be some logic. I wanted there to be some thought. Probably it's not been a great journey, but that's the journey that I've gone on. And then when my candidate, who had been Kennedy, when he suspended his campaign and threw his weight behind Trump and explained why, and on top of that was not allowed to explain why on some of the big stream medias, we're going to censor that. We're not going to allow the American people to hear that. This just made me switch. And again, I'm trying hard to be careful not to just become a Kool-Aid drinking fool, but that's the journey in a very quick and not very well explained nutshell. Enigma Severus, I think, see previous Enigma Severus. Oh my gosh, Curtis, John Ponderero, you got Ben Shapiro saying it. Facts, yeah. And one of my friends sent me a text once. And he was very not happy about Shapiro and some of the things he was saying. And I don't want to be completely unfair to my friend. I don't want to share all that he said, but he was he let me know that he very much didn't like Ben Shapiro. But what he could not know, because I'd never opened up about it, because I felt suppressed, I didn't share anymore the people that I was listening to and the people that I was beginning to admire. Now, again, I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. There's times when Ben Shapiro says something that I'm like, well, what the hell was that? But I kind of like a lot of the things that he says. And one of the things that he says that I think is true is facts don't care about your feelings. It's maybe he is being, but I don't mean to be rude or unempathetic. I definitely don't want to be unsympathetic to anyone who's suffering. But it's truth. Facts are facts, no matter how you feel about them. Enigma Severus, I need to send you the Matt Damon Tom Cruise interview. Damon had a hilarious bit about believing anything that man says. It's so funny. John Ponderero, I caused a lefty to have a conniption when I mentioned Shapiro. He legit refused to discuss Christianity after that. And Shapiro's not a Christian. If you want, look, I know you love C.S. Lewis. You're one of the very few people who loves C.S. Lewis at least as much as I do. I've never met somebody that loved C.S. Lewis as much or more than I did before. Ben Shapiro does a talk on the Screw Tape Letters that is just fantastic. And it grieves me that I couldn't share that with my friend. But, I already knew that he probably wouldn't appreciate that. John Ponderero, he and Tom McDonald did a rap called Facts. It was really funny. And the fact is that song has established, not really established, but has caused Ben Shapiro to literally be a #1 selling rap artist. And I just think that's crazy funny. TRP Dr. Spider, I've just noticed this trend ramping up as of late. I'm interested in what points line up. And it helps confirm my conspiracy theories. Well, feel free to share conspiracy theories here, because while I'm trying not to be a conspiracy theorist, I've been there. I've been the guy that listened to Alex Jones. I've been the guy that listened to the hardcore far right stuff. And so I get one, I get believing conspiracy theories. Two, I get having that feeling of, anyway, I'm not explaining it very well, but that was also part of my journey, is because I tried to listen to the things that my friends were sharing, and it seemed to me like all it was Alex Jones just on the left. And I had to grow out and heal out of that place. And I really hoped that I could help them heal, but I think instead I just offended them. So there it is. Just making an offhand reference. Lately I'm finding a lot of truth in conspiracy theories. Excellent, Spider. No Kool-Aid, not any color ever. Excellent. I love that. Enigma Severus. His name is Sharknato. Ben's a sci-fi nerd. I didn't know that about him. And that's a compliment. Okay. I'm going to share what I was going to share. Probably most of you have seen this. But again, the context is Trump and others and a lot of social media are saying that Venezuelan cartels have taken over apartment complexes in Colorado. And this woman is calling out Vance on that. But listen to how she does it and listen to his response. I'm very curious what you guys think of it.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting, because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said, rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
So what do you guys think about that? John Ponterera, only a handful, though. Yeah. And maybe I should dive into that. Maybe that's what the other topic should be next week. Let's see how that poll's doing. All right. Right now, 50% more about science, 25% more about Trump, 25%. And I'm assuming that's you, John. Let me know if it isn't. Another topic, and John wants a spreadsheet of Tulsa Gabbard photos. All right, Enigma Severus, can I be in the handful? If you can do something about it, I say yes. The plan in action. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Maybe I'm being obtuse. I don't mean to be, but I'm not sure I understand the question. The plan in action. I think so, but let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. John Ponterero, want to hear a really cool Bible verse concerning handful? Okay. I'm a little hesitant to play this one because I only listened to part of it. And so I'm half afraid that maybe it doesn't go anywhere worthwhile. But I like this guy. Damon Amani, he came to my attention. He does things, they're not deep fakes, although some people have taken them as such, but he does this thing where he basically superimposes himself saying something into a video. And I learned about him where he made it look like he was talking on to the World Economic Forum, and he was calling them out for their horrible policies. And what's his name? Dr. Evil, the guy who runs the organization. He's walking off the stage just looking disgusted. I have no idea what the original was all about, but he just does stuff like that. And he shared this. He says, "This is what is happening in the church. I'm interested to know what you'll think. I'm just interested to know what you'll think. You don't necessarily have to take a position per se, but I'm interested to know what you'll think. Enigma Severus, John 10:28, I give them eternal life, and no one can snatch them from my hand." That's beautiful. I hope that's true. Like I say, I'm having my own journey, but I hope that's true. All right, let's play this thing, and we'll see what it is.
I mean, it is not a good look on Jesus.
This is a female pastor, of course, at St. Dunstan's Episcopal Church.
Now, personally, I want to make a side note. I'm actually dating a woman who's an assistant pastor. I have no problem with women being pastors. He evidently does. So I don't agree with him on that, but I do agree with him on a lot of other things that he says. So
in Shoreline, Washington, and she will tell you that Jesus sets a bad example to follow.
What's worse is when you get to actual stories in scripture that make you go, ugh.
And look, I am going to admit, there's a lot of things in the Old Testament anyway that do kind of make me cringe. Oh, it blocked your comment. Oh, darn it. John 10:28, and I give them eternal life, and no one can take them from my hand. Oh, it posted. I don't know what's going on, Enigma. YouTube doesn't like you, but I do.
That's not quite the example of Jesus I want. And this is one of them. Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman. And I name this because we often aren't given permission to say, I don't like that thing in scripture, because it is such a sacred text, but it's a text that can handle some wrestling. Okay?
Now, I only watched a little bit further than this, so I'm going to be with you just discovering what she says, but I want to make a comment on this. I'm not a fundamentalist anymore. And I'm absolutely okay with someone wanting to basically having questions and finding it difficult to believe. I want to be respectful to people like that, because I've been one of them not that long ago. But like somebody said earlier in the chat, it makes me wonder, why are you preaching if you don't believe what you're saying? Now, she may not be going that far. John Ponderera looked it up for context. Cool.
It has withstood centuries, so we can argue with it a little bit, okay? Jesus's treatment of the Syrophoenician woman is the last example of Christianity that I want. She is desperate. Her daughter is suffering and comes to Jesus begging for help. And he basically says that she's less than a dog.
This is where I stopped it, mainly because I can't help, right or wrong, I can't help but, not that he needs it, but I can't help but defend Jesus here. I kind of get why she's saying this, but at the same time, that's the point of the story, I think. I know the Bible doesn't say it, but I've always kind of felt that there was some twinkle in his eye or something that made her understand that he was not saying that she was a dog. What he was saying was, this society treats your people like dogs, because she replied so beautifully with, yeah, but even a dog can get thrown the scraps under the table. Enigma Severus, yeah, there are hard things to read. I would argue the reason there are difficult things to read and know from that book is because they are true. In the words of Vader, if you only knew the power of Christ. Bring me the data tapes. Sorry. Okay. Now let's see what else she has to say.
I mean, it is not a good look on Jesus. And I hate that it is supposed to be upheld as a scriptural example for us. Because that's not the Jesus I pray to. That is not the Jesus I know.
It is definitely not Jesus that she prays to. I believe her. And Jesus did not say that the Syrophoenician woman was less than a dog, and he wasn't mean to her because of her womanhood. He was testing her faith, knowing that she would pass, and at the end, he healed her daughter. So she was just way off on that one, but that's...
And what do you guys think? Let me know what you think. Hey, Deadman Walking! Thank you for showing up and leaving the comment. You are a gentleman and a scholar. I am pretending like I know what I'm talking about the decline of faith, whether it's good, whether it's bad, where it's bad, where it might be justified in some cases. Maybe not justified, but understandable in some cases. Yeah. Enigma Severus, even the most difficult things you read about God's actions, the humans whom it was done to were much worse. He has yet to genuinely use his power. Well, I mean, if he's got the ability to create the universe, I mean, if we posit that, then he's got to have way more than our minds are able to deal with. And if that doesn't happen to be true, then it's a whole different ball of wax. But
that's understandable. She's a liberal feminist priest, so of course she has to argue with God. Just because you're God, you don't get to lead me and set an example for me, because we are humans. We change, we evolve. So it's perfectly reasonable for us to set an example for God, making him.
Oh, I'm almost glad I didn't listen to this part yet. Enigma Severus, I don't think he's putting it as eloquently, but it reminds me of C.S. Lewis's God in the Dock right now. The woman has a very long way to go pertaining to context. Adhere to your doctrine or lose your faith. And C.S. Lewis talked about that. You can't be a good communist if you don't go back to your communist manifesto, and if you're not associating with other communists and talking about communism. And I don't think I definitely am not saying that in mockery. It's just true. You can't hold on to anything that you believe if you don't kind of go back to it. Now, of course, you have to be careful, because you can turn that into just brainwashing. As you eloquently said, Spider, no Kool-Aid of any color. But at the same time, we all know you have to stand for something or you fall for anything. So you have to be going back to whatever it is that your sources for virtue and knowledge are. And you have to talk with other people who believe in that. Now, I'm also strong on not having echo chambers, but at the same time, when you alienate yourself from the people, from the people that you believe with, it gets pretty lonesome, and you end up like a crazy person like me. She has a long way to go in basic reading. God in the Dock has so many great concepts and truths. I'm happy I have its original work. Oh, that's beautiful. That's fantastic.
Change and evolve with us.
We are surprising and confounding beings, and God is constantly changing and evolving alongside with us.
Now, I'm going to risk being dogmatic here. She may be right, and I may be crazy, and it just may be a lunatic you're looking for. But one of the most beautiful things I've ever read was when I read the comedy of Dante, obviously in English translation. And I'm no scholar of the work, so don't, please forgive me if I don't go down into a deep rabbit hole of erudition. But at the end, he sees God, and God is constantly changing, and Dante is very crestfallen at this because he has been taught by his Catholic Church that God is unchanging. And I can't remember, was it Saint Bernard? Forgive me. I think it was Saint Bernard who accompanied him there. No, it wasn't Saint Bernard. Who was it? I can't remember the saint. It wasn't, I don't think it was Beatrice at this time, because I think at the higher levels, it was one of the saints. It's been too long. I need to reread it. But anyway, the long and the short of it is the saint or the angel that he was with explained to him that no, it's not God that's changing. It's your eyes that are changing. And as you're growing and as you're growing closer to him, it looks like he's changing, but it's only because your perspective is changing. Now, again, she may be the one that's right, and I may be the one that is wrong. But at least that is basically what I hold to. If God is what we say he is, and it does appear that he changes. It appears that he changed from the New Testament to the Old Testament to the New Testament. But I think that is just ourselves. She's right. We evolve. And the idea of God evolves. But God himself, I think, is unchanging. Again, forgive me if I'm being dogmatic. You don't have to believe that. That's just my perspective. But
the Syrophoenician woman shows us what it is to live in faith that is not final or done, but with a God that is living amongst us and awake to the newness of our lives and experiences that cannot be fully encapsulated in scripture written thousands of years ago. But
okay, there is one thing I'm liking that she's saying. I do think that God dwells among us. He's not something that's distant, and yeah, he may be totally other in a way that we can't comprehend, but he's also in our midst. He's in our everyday life. He was incarnated as Christ. And again, not trying to convince you. If you don't believe that, that's absolutely okay. The original God in the Dock is undispositions. Lewis is literally the apologist to the layman. We can see that example today. How many of us honestly care to listen to these holier than scholars? It's the humble man. Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, the humble, penitent man will be the truth bearer for others. Because they are humble about who they are, humility brings the glory, not pride. Same with how Lewis lived. He gave away his riches on a daily basis. He lived in a simple house, which I would love to buy. Yeah, hell to the yeah. I tell you what, we need to make a fortune, and you and I both buy it, and you can have the master bedroom, and I'll be the butler. In my perspective, God of the Old Testament is a story and part of a living father raising his young children, not different from the God of the New Testament, the loving, a loving father. Gotcha. I understand. Well, there's reasons why I chose again to have the Samaritan, or not the Samaritan, the prodigal son be my icon today.
That can be made sense of with the lived experience of those before us to guide us where we are now. Jesus changes.
Jesus changes. And now turn with me to the book of Jezebel, chapter 9.
O God of pronouns, we give praise to the Great One, the one who is identifiable as God. I am what I am, you say, the great they, the incarnate he and she, the God of trans being, impregnating Mary, fathering God, breastfeeding God of many breasts. You shatter all stereotypes, making every single person male and female, intersex, non-binary.
All right, I want to pause it for just a second. I don't know that I have a comment to make about this, but I will say this: like, we can't accuse them of being fundamentalists. I'll say that. Enigma Severus, I stayed in Lewis's house for 3 weeks. I got the best room too, next to the kitchen. It was always warm. Unburdened by what has been. Love England. It is comforting country in my perspective. Good evening, Matt Chewood. No, it's okay. I've been talking about the decline in religious faith, the places where maybe that's understandable, the places where it is kind of terrible. Burning churches and basically, I'm forgetting the term, but tearing up Bibles and tearing up property. I know that you've had your questions and your thoughts in the past, but I think I hope I'm not speaking for you incorrectly, but I think you would never have thought that was cool. And then I've talked about the Democratic Party and how they basically just God is right out. And then I've done some miscellaneous talking, and here in about 10 minutes, 20 minutes maybe, I'm going to call it a stream. Everybody's saying hello to each other. Enigma Severus, help us. Curtis keeps pressing buttons, and these photos come to life and start talking to us. He's a witch. A witch. Burn the witch.
Binary, in your image, exactly in your image. Spectrum, rainbow God, who put your promise for nonviolence in the symbol for queer love before humanity knew, because you knew. Who had Joseph, who could not sleep with a woman in a beautiful lady's cloak, perhaps of rainbow colors, before we knew. You knew.
Hilarious and sad at the same time. But this is what is happening to the church.
All right. Now, again, I'm not trying to get you to believe one way or the other. If you believe the way that woman believes, I'm not going to mock you or anything like that. But I am curious, what do you think of that? I don't. I weigh more than a goose. Please stop. These people are lunatics. Where did I find them? On Twitter. And this is Damon Imani. I don't know if you know who he is. Usually his shtick is to basically Photoshop himself into a video and have him railing against the World Economic Forum or the women of The View. How much does a hen weigh? I only know how much a Hemming weighs. Huzzah! All right, 20 more minutes. I'm gonna share one last thing. Again, the end of the streams tend to be where I let my bias just run rampant. So hopefully, if you're not liking this, you can forgive me. Around 4 pounds. Again, my journey back toward Trump has not been fueled by Alex Jones, who I may have listened. I've listened to his interview with Joe Rogan in the last 4 years. That's it. It's not fueled by Fox News. It's not fueled by Glenn Beck. It's been fueled by liberals who have come out and said, hey, this is not liberalism. This is not freedom. This is not what we're about. And the Young Turks producer, Anna Kasparian, she left the Democratic Party. Well, I'll just let you hear her story.
In 2022, it was around March. I was walking my dog. It was not quite dark yet, but the sun was setting. As I'm walking my dog, I see these two guys that were just kind of like moving around weirdly. You know, they seemed kind of manic and their clothes were tattered. So I knew that they were probably homeless. And I also knew that they're probably on something just based on like the twitchy way they were acting. But living in LA, I mean, there's homeless people everywhere, right? So I've never had problems. I didn't think anything of it. But as I was bending down to pick up my dog's mess, one of the guys like grabs me by my hips and he had an erection.
Oh God.
And just starts like humping me. And I didn't know what to do. Like I was terrified. I didn't have a weapon on me.
Yep.
Like I had no way of defending myself. I didn't know how far it was going to go because it's two guys. I'm by myself with my little dog. It was one of the most terrifying things ever because.
Okay. And I'll pause it there. The pictures are talking again. Yes. Isn't it scary? And I absolutely don't want to make light of this woman's plight. That's terrible. You know, you ought to be able to feel safe in your own home, in your own yard. The ex-right winger in me wants to say Second Amendment, baby, Second Amendment, but at the same time, I don't want to politicize this necessarily. I just want her story to kind of speak for itself. It's terrible that that's happening, and you got to ask yourself, whose policies are causing that to happen? That is what waking up looks like for women on the left. Enigma Severus, John Ponderera. I wonder if you get naughty pictures to move as well. Okay, sorry. Thought it was funny. Maybe they do.
I'm pretty good at defending myself. In that moment, I just knew there was no option.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And luckily, he stopped and they just laughed at me and walked away as they were laughing at me. And so there was the fear and then the humiliation and weirdly shame. Like I felt ashamed.
Yeah, I know that's part of I don't want to act like I know lots about women, but I've heard that experience a lot, that women who have those terrible things happen to them, they often, illogically enough, and not to get on to them, but they'll feel shame. And I hate that for them because there's nothing she did that was wrong at all. I mean, I don't know the whole context, but unless she just, you know, insert an exaggerated and foolish thing here, but very likely there's absolutely nothing that she did wrong except maybe for, you know, being out there when they're out there, but then maybe she can't get away from that in LA. I don't know. As a hardcore absolutist supporting all the amendments, I'm glad to see anyone becoming aware of how important they are. 100%.
For some reason. And it was awful. And it was really taking a toll on my mental health because I have to walk my dog, right? So at least 2 or 3 times a day, I'm going outside kind of scared. And so I opened up about this on the show, not really thinking much of it. And before I knew it, I'm starting to get these messages, and it's like really, really harsh stuff. And it's about how you are painting a picture of the homeless community. How could you be like this? These are your unhoused neighbors and they need help.
Now, who is it that we're told is racist? Who is it that we're told makes baseless assumptions? Enigma Severus, if you ever watched The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon would use chocolate to modify behavior. Sheldon then notices that can do the same thing. He goes, I wonder if anyone else has stumbled onto that. Right on. Sparked my thought on the pictures moving.
A few people accused me of being racist when I had never disclosed the race of the individuals who did this to me. And in fact, they were white. And so when they started accusing me of being racist, I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you assuming that the people who did this?
Of course.
Yeah. I think you might have a problem here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that woke me up. Because I'm like, oh my God.
They eat their own.
They eat their own. And I already talked about some of these others last week, and it's getting close to the time for Netters Network. So I know I didn't end this on a deep kind of a gut-wrenching thing, but I do feel for the woman. I'm not gloating in any way. I hate that it happened to her, but at the same time, this is the journey that a lot of us are taking. We don't want to side with hypocrisy. We don't want to side with racism, even when it's disguised as inclusion. We don't want to side with the people who are bigots. And you say, well, Trump's a bigot. I've already talked about that on my channel. We don't have time, but we can go over it again if we want. Let's take a look at the poll and call it a stream. All right. So it looks like more about science. So got 66% of the vote, more about Trump. And the other topic was tied. I'm assuming the other topic would have been something about Tulsi Gabbard, which would have been fun. But I will share a little bit more of what I'm learning from the real Anthony Fauci, and we will see how far we can trust the science. Matt Chewa, the modern progressive left, is racist, bigoted, intolerant, hypocritical, downright evil as a group. Individuals may not fit this description 100%. And that's, like I say, we have to be careful about overgeneralizing ourselves. What's true of the cabal may not be true of their supporters. The friends that I talk all the time about are really, I don't mean to sound disingenuous when I say this, they're very kind, loving people. I probably wouldn't have made it this far in my life without their help. But something crazy and squirrely and sad is going on. And all I really know to do about it is talk on my blog and share what I learn and hopefully learn some from you guys. All right, let's get the... I always do that. I need to stop doing that. Well, let's thank everybody in the chat and call it a stream. Once again, we had a good, diverse group of intelligent, wonderful people. And I'm glad that the topic didn't scare anyone away. I hope nothing that I said sounded like proselytizing. I promise I didn't mean for it to be. John Ponderero, thank you for your support, your prayers. You're a wonderful person. Thank you for all you do for the channel and the videos that you send me to help. Connie Cleary, hail, Bird Woman of YouTube. Check out her second channel, Fluff Chick Productions, one of the best moderators you will find. Charlotte Nightstar, the werewolf. Oh, thank you for coming in and leaving a comment. This guy's a jerk. Enigma Severus, thank you for coming in. Thank you for all of your information about Lewis and philosophy. thank you for your comments. I'm so glad you're here. Ms. Frosty, a beautiful day. Thank you very much for coming in and leaving a comment. Who else? Tim, thank you for showing up and leaving a comment. Blessed are the cheese makers. And yeah, for a while I muted myself and forgot to unmute myself because somebody called. DJ Ronnie G has got us going on the TV. That's fantastic. Thank you for your support and for the comment. Darth Plato, thank you for all of your input. You're so intelligent. It's wonderful. And LDG, Free the Net, thank you for coming in and leaving a comment. I cannot wait for your app to come out. I am hoping that we can, in fact, free the net, take some of the power back from the big tech companies, make them do what we want, make them abide by our terms. Accounting Sheep, thank you for showing up and leaving a comment. You're very thoughtful and very funny. TRP Dr. Spider, thank you for coming back, and thank you for your comments. You're very insightful, very thoughtful. I am intrigued by your thoughts and beliefs. 100% am. And cool, you put a picture on there, and it's a spider. I like it. Was there anyone else? I know there's at least one more. I'm getting there. I love that there's so much chat that goes on. That's fantastic. Matt Cheatwood, thank you very much. I hope that the goats are doing okay. I hope the family's doing okay. Yeah, and my thoughts and my prayers, and I know that you're also going on your journey of philosophy and belief, and I support you whichever way, well, up to a point, but I support you in just near any reasonable conclusions that you come up with. All right, John Ponderera, make a judgment of when I shake their hand and get to know them. Right on. Thank you. I think Trapdoor Spider is Trapdoor Spider. Yes, okay. So, all right. We have a Trapdoor Spider. Huzzah! Don't get caught in the web. Get caught in the trapdoor. Pigs, goats, chickens, guineas, and button quail all doing well. Okay, I'm cutting it close. Debtors is 7 minutes away, so I'm going to give my spiel. It's been said that life is pain, and anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something. And it's true. I am trying to sell you something. Yes, like the lead scene says, stay strong. But what I'm trying to sell you is on the idea that you are, in fact, able and intelligent enough to run your own life. You don't need big companies or big governments to tell you how to think or how to live. Research where the word agony comes from. That's not a bad idea. I know a little bit about it, but I may do some more research on it, make it part of my talk. Trying to sell you on the idea that freedom is better than tyranny, that liberty is better than slavery. And I want you to know that you are not going mad. Bring back the Agon. You're going sane in a world gone mad. Thank you for listening. I hope to see a bunch of you over at Netters Network. Thank you very much and have a great evening. Naughty Spawn, you face the ticks. Boo!